Guess what? Guess what?
Cherylyn Barnsey.
Hi Chuckies, Cherylyn Barnsey, and today's question comes from my Facebook site, from a bloke what's called Rod Allen, and he wants to know, should kids be smacked? Well, to put it simply, the answer is yes, they should be smacked. I had to smack Desiree when she was growing up because she was a rotten little shit, she was, and if I didn't, she'd be 10 times worse. She copped thousands of floggings and she turned out just fine. All these people saying it does all this brain damage to them and all that bullshit, what a load of garbage. You're doing more damage to them by not smacking them because you're letting them grow up to be little arseholes. No mother likes to smack her own child. They don't. It makes you feel horrible. So I turned it into a little bit of a game. When Desiree was acting up, I'd say, you want the good news or the bad news? And she'd say, bad news. And I'm like, you're going to get a smack. So what's the good news? I'm like, well, see that tree outside? Go outside and pick what branch you're going to get smacked with. And she used to think she'd be a smart-ass by picking the smallest branch on it. Little did she know that would just make me smack her even harder with it. So eventually she learned if she got a decent-sized branch, she'd just get a few whacks, whack, whack, and that would be it. And she'd learn a lesson, you know. Another thing I want to say is, you don't always need to smack the child. Sometimes if you want to punish them, play games with their minds. I remember one time, it made me sick to my stomach. I was doing my crosswords and I hear this bash, bash, bash on the door. And I come outside and it was Bev from up the road. And she said, you've got to do something about Desiree because I just caught her trying to bully my Cheryl into eating some dog poo off the side of the street. So I went outside and I looked her right in the face and I said, get inside you. So she comes in and I said, were you trying to make Cheryl eat dog shit? And she said, no. And I'm like, do you want to go to your tree, pick a branch? She said, no. And I'm like, were you trying to make her do it? And she said, yes. And I said to myself, I could smack you, but you really need to learn this lesson. So I took her by the ponytail and I dragged her outside. And I said, see that dog shit? From when we had the Rockville Cindy. I said, see that dog shit? Pick it up. And she said, Mum, please, don't make me eat it. And I said, I'm not going to make you eat it. Go and pick it up. So she stood there and she's like, I'm going to get it all over me hands. And I said, pick it up or you go and pick your branch. So she picked it up, turning her nose up and carrying on. And then I said, rub it all over your face. And she laughed at me and I said, it's not a joke, Chucky. Rub it all over your face now. So she's crying and carrying on and I said, look, rub it on your face or I'll rub it on there for you. So she rubs it on and she's crying and she's pretending she's going to throw up and go, oh, oh. So I said, right, to learn your lesson, you can leave that on there for an hour. And she started trying to flick it all off and I said, every time you do that, I'll add another hour to it. So she actually just sat there in the backyard for an hour with the dog poo on her face and she yelled out, Mum, can I wash it off now? And I said, have you learnt your lesson? And she said, yes. And I said, fine. Wash it off and go and apologise to Cheryl and go and apologise to her mother, please. And so she did it and that was that. And she learned her lesson. You need to be tough and you need to punish them so they learn to be decent people. I've told that story a few times and a lot of people have said, you know, if Doc's heard about that and all this rubbish. And I said, back then there was no Doc's bullshit. You could punish your children in your own style. Children back then were easily kept in line than they were these days because mothers smack their kids more. So just have a think about it. Anyway, Rod, that's your answer. If any of you lot have any more questions for my Guess What series, leave them all over the net. You can go to my Facebook site and that's www.facebook.com/CherylynBarnesAU for Australia. Or you can leave it on my Twitter site at Cherylyn Barnes. Hashtag naughty little poo face. Or you can add me on my Instagram site and that is at Cherylyn Barnes. And make sure you click subscribe so you will see all the other Guess Whats and all the other YouTubes pretty much. Alright, Chookies, let's leave it at that. Ciao for now, Chookies.